Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Awaken Your Truth Conversations. My name is Denise with denisesimone.com. And today I am thrilled to be speaking with Deborah Acker. Deborah is a life coach who helps people remember how important truth really is. She knows what it's like to conform to other people's rules, to put others' needs before her own, to pretend everything is okay even when it's not, and to not honor herself for fear of rejection or worse, total annihilation. And she also knows what it's like to come out on the other side of this. So some of the things that have shaped her journey to truth have been her parents' separation at the age of 2, the loss of her mom at 17, and just this knowing that she deserves to bring her dreams and her desires to life. So this is meant for her, stepping out of the corporate world, traveling to every continent, and conquering her fears. So welcome, Deborah.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk to you because we have discussed that our core message is so similar,
Yeah.
and it's just always nice to have somebody else's perspective on truth and to hear their story around truth and how we ultimately how we disconnect from it and then find ourselves back to it, right? That's something that I think is so important to talk about, especially right now.
Yeah, we get so conditioned to sort of just be kind of going through life, not really being super mindful. Kind of sometimes, it can feel like we're just sort of like going in the easy direction, right? We get a job that just is paying us. We kind of do what we've learned from childhood, where we get married, we have a family, and those, while those can be true for us, they can also sort of just be the things that we've learned. And a lot of the work that I do with people is to invest, just like I'm sure you do too, is just to investigate what's really true for me, right? Is this an inherited truth that I took on from childhood, or is this my actual truth here?
Yes, yes, so well said. So tell me about your journey. Kind of walk us through that journey a little bit.
Yeah, so actually, I talked about my parents separating at the age of 2. I talked about the loss of my mom, but really, I got on this truth journey really with the idea and the intent of looking for love, right? We
Mm.
are all like looking for our significant other, we're all looking for our partner in this life, and I kept attracting the same type of guy, which I'm sure a lot of women can relate to, especially, and even men too, I'm sure. But I kept attracting the same type of person over and over and over again, and I was so done. I had just like I made that decision. I kept saying, okay, this is gonna change, right? I kept saying like, okay, this guy's going to be different. Something's going to change, right? And I would make that decision, and then the universe would bring me the same type of guy, even though in my mind I thought it was different. Like initially, you get involved with somebody, you're like, okay, this is different, right? And so, what ended up happening was like I had this moment. I was at my family friend's house and I was sobbing, and I was just like, I'm so done. Like what can I do? I'd spent years in therapy, which there's pieces that were effective, but the overall scheme of things was I just, I had awareness of my story, but I just kept telling the same story over and over, and nothing was really truly changing.
Mm.
And so that is really where my truth journey began, right? Like I went in search of like, how can I change this for myself? And then how can I help others to create permanent, powerful change that can be quick, that doesn't have to take years and years in therapy or, years and years of searching.
Yeah. What do you think it is that we are searching for ultimately?
Well,
So
what
for
was the
for you, externally, it looked like you were searching for that partner, right? And so how did that bring you to your truth? What is it that we're really searching for?
Yeah, so such a great question.
I don't mess around.
I really think we're searching for self-love. We're like I was searching for love, and at the time I thought it was love of another. What I came to realize that it was to love myself. And even if you think, okay, I love myself, if you look at certain pieces in your life where maybe you haven't stood in your truth around things. You've settled for less than you deserve. So if like you have that outer desire to have like this, an amazing career, right? And you're in a career right now where maybe that isn't the same thing. It's really important to look at. It's like, why am I settling? And a lot of those pieces have to do with not loving ourselves as fully as we can really, truly be loving ourselves.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And so, how does that show up to get listeners to really understand that better? How does that show up internally in the form of our thinking? So people can really identify with, because, most people might be listening and go, well, I love myself. It's this feeling or this idea that doesn't seem so out there. Like, well, of course, everybody would think I love myself, but what we're so unaware of is how we're thinking and feeling internally, and then how that reflects our external life. So let's start internal. What are some of the thoughts that could be running rampant in our head that would show up as a lack of self-love?
Well, it's like one of the things is like, how are we talking to ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
How do we talk to our bodies? Like, if you've ever said anything that's like, they center around not being good enough, right? The feeling of not being good enough. But if you've ever said anything that's like, oh, like maybe like even just something as simple as like, I'm fat, or I don't look good today, or that doesn't really look good on me. Those are just like that's just kind of like that basic way that, we can show up and not really be loving ourselves to the full extent. I mentioned, one of the things that I just mentioned was like settling for less than we deserve. Mm-hmm. So anytime, like if you've ever it's so interesting because in the last few weeks, I have met several women and been connecting with them through my work and also through my own learnings and my own teachings. And I've met several women who have settled for less than they deserve in relationship, and who have like said, oh, well, it was okay that, someone I was dating. I mean, one example that I have, which kind of blew my mind, was just of a woman who, she's in her like 50s or 60s, and she said she said, I'm dating a guy, or she was dating a guy that she thought was the one, and yet he was dating, and she knew this from the start, he was dating 2 or 3 other women. And it's like, I mean, and I get it. Like, I totally get it. I remember being in those spaces where it's like, you sort of like, you think, okay, this will do. Like you want love so badly that you're willing to settle for whatever's in front of you. And so it's like, instead of saying like, do I deserve this? What do I deserve? It's like for me, it's like, no, I know that I deserve somebody that's going to put his full heart, his full time, his full attention into me. And that is because, I've taken that self-love journey where I've really undone the places where I felt not good enough, the places where I felt unworthy, like unworthy to really hold that standard for myself.
Yes.
And so that's just been a big piece of my journey.
So some of the limiting beliefs would be, give me 3 core limiting beliefs that women especially have.
Well, I mean, the biggest one is that I'm not good enough. And I'm trying to think of how to describe this so that it's really very tangible. I keep coming back to, it's like, where in your life are you accepting less than what your heart truly desires?
Yeah.
Like that is...
It's the feeling of unworthiness.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's that feeling of like, okay, like this will do, this is enough, this is okay, even though your heart desires more.
Yeah.
And that's really a space where we're not being honest with ourselves.
Yes.
And guess what? It's like if we're not being honest with ourselves, we are not going to attract honesty around us either.
Right. Where do you think that comes from? Why is it so, where did we learn that from?
So, I mean, I think it comes from fear, right? We learn from our parents. So, think about our conditioning when we're kids, right? We're doing everything that we can to basically survive. Like, if we don't take on what our parents' beliefs are, how our parents sort of show up, I mean, there's the underlying belief that they might leave us, or I mean, we won't survive. Like it's like, so all we can do, instead of, we don't have our boundary systems in place, and so all we can do is just take on their truth as our own truth. And so it's just really, really important when you are in a space of really like wanting to move towards truth, when you do something, to check in with yourself and say, is this really truthful for me? And if not, where did I learn this from?
Yes.
And that's so, so, so important.
And so it's really would you say it's how we learned it and where we learned it, but it's also a perception that we took on, right, of how we observed something. And then we took on a story about it. So can we talk a little bit about stories?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's really common. So and I like to use an example for this because I think it just really helps really clarify where sort of how we get our stories and sort of, and the conclusions that end up coming up from the stories that we get.
Yeah.
Right. So I use examples like, say you're 3 or 5 years old and maybe you're 5 years old and you ask your mom, you want chocolate. And so you ask your mom for a piece of chocolate. And your mom, having your best intent and your best interest, says, no, you need to have an apple instead. You might make subconsciously several conclusions from just like, that's like one just small moment in the whole course of, as you're growing up, right? And so
it seems so insignificant.
Exactly. It seems so insignificant. And so the conclusions we might make from that is like, I don't know what's good and what's right for me. I don't know what's good for me. And also the conclusion that we might make is, I'm never going to be able to have something that I want. And so it's very interesting, right? Because it seems like that is such a small moment. That is such a simple thing that can happen. And yet those are some really big conclusions, some really big stories that we can take on that can end up really impacting us. And so the way, I work with energy, right? And I work with emotions. And I always say, the mind can change it, but the feeling, the emotion will change it. And so, like, if you think about that, right? So what ends up happening is that moment, that sort of sensory feeling gets stored in our body, that emotion of sort of like being heartbroken is what it's like interesting, because I'm just intuiting it's like
it's
hearing
like a
heartbroken.
sense of betrayal, right?
It's a sense of betrayal, and you can really feel it in your heart when you think about that little kid who's sitting there and just is like, but I want that chocolate, and is just being told, no, you can't have the chocolate. And of course, like I said, it's being done from a space of love, and it's being done from a space of trying to do the best thing for you in that moment, but it's like it breaks your heart.
Yes.
And so that emotion gets stored in our body. And what ends up happening, if you think about that as like a magnet, it ends up like we're like emitting that emotion, that energy out. And people continue until we clear that energy, until we basically shift that energy out of our body. People continually keep showing up for us to prove that we are right. Yes. So they keep showing up saying, yeah, you can't have what you want, or you are always going to be rejected. And so in all of the work that I do is just to help someone shift that and help someone clear that, so that they can really like know that they can have everything that their heart desires in that world. I mean, that's one example, but to clear whatever it is. So if you have that continual emotion, energy that keeps showing up, which you might not be aware of, but you might be noticing, it's like, I'm always failing, I'm always getting rejected. So fear of failure, you asked me about some limiting beliefs, like there can be a fear of failure or fear of rejection that's so common. and can stop us from moving forward towards our heart's desires, right? Towards the things that we truly want, the things that are truly calling us if we were connected to our soul and connected to our heart.
Yes. Really good. Really, really good stuff. I want to talk about the importance of knowing our no. Why is it so important to know and be clear about our no's just as much as our yeses?
Yeah, so I wrote a blog or a post about this on Facebook last week around you have to know your no, or you will never, you will never know your yes, basically. And
so good.
it's like, so I've so many times, okay, and I'll use the example that happened to me last week, right? So years ago when I was going through that relationship journey, and of course I'm still on it, but as I was going through that, I would, like I said, I like we all do, I said yes to things that were not serving me, that were not for my highest good, that were not in love for myself.
Yes.
Right. And one of my biggest patterns that I've undone was a fear of abandonment, right? And so what I kept attracting was this unavailable guy, this guy that either physically wasn't available, emotionally wasn't available. And so I kept attracting that same type of person, and it was so frustrating, and it just sucked, right? And I kept, in an effort to try to not make them, quote unquote, abandon me, or not make them leave, or try to make them available, I said yes to things that were not in self-love, or that were not in love for myself, right? And so last week I'm on the phone, and I've started, this is an interesting thing, but I am in a relationship with a man. It's a healing relationship. And so that's a totally different. So many times we go in a relationship and we're like, could this be the one? This is the one, right? And like, I have a sense, I have a knowing around the relationship that I am creating. And so to be in relationship, you have to practice being in relationship, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And so it's like, great, I've been doing all this work on myself, but it's like at some point I need that other person to sort of reflect some of the areas that I might not be able to see, or might not be able to tackle just on my own.
Which is much different, being in a relationship consciously than being one unconsciously, right? Because now you get to really observe where you're responsible, where he's responsible, and how you're both playing off of each other, right? Yeah.
Exactly. We get to observe that, and we get to, like, I get to keep choosing the energy. How much can I receive in this relationship?
Yeah.
How much can I love? How much can I love myself? How much love can I give to the other person? And so, I mean, this relationship is like maybe one of the biggest gifts I've ever received. And it was awesome, because it was such a sign of
growth,
and me being so aligned, and like no longer was attached to this idea like, oh, but if I'm dating him, he has to be the one. Right. And it was a total shift in focus. And so last week we were on the phone, and basically, we were setting up this is very new, but so we were setting up the dynamics of our relationship and what that was going to look like. And because it's a healing relationship, and we both were going in knowing, this is sort of that step to that big love that we all so desire and so deserve. He had put out there around, the possibility of dating other people. And what I did is I looked at the energy of that, right? I looked at how I was going to feel, say, for instance, if that was a choice that he made, how was I going to feel if he's like, okay, well, because we were just being honest. It's like, okay, well, I'm going out with this person. If that was what was going to happen, it was like, okay, I'm just going to be honest and put that forth. And so I looked at how was I going to feel if that was happening? And what I noticed was that was recreating the old patterning, right? It was basically going, okay, I'm not good enough. Okay, he can go and invest here and then also invest in me. And so I had the most amazing, delicious opportunity to say no, to say, you know what? Like, if you want to date someone else, that's totally fine. I just can't be part of it. Like, this won't work for me. And I'm not stopping you from doing that. I'm just saying, this isn't the right situation for me. And so it was really, really cool because in the past, saying yes had caused the exact opposite of what I had wanted to create, right? It had caused that person to basically end up on some level rejecting me, or on some level me feeling abandoned, me, this person not being fully available for me. And so
Yes.
in saying that no, what ended up happening for me was the exact opposite. He was like, oh, okay, well, this is something that I really want. So I'm going to choose to be with you and put my focus and time and attention here. And I recognize that this is the exact relationship I need right now. So I'm going to say no to sort of the bigger love, in recognition that this is actually going to help me grow and really get me ready and prepared for the love that that I know I'm meant to have as well. So it was really a really powerful
That is
experience.
such a great example of,
Yeah.
we teach people how to treat us, right? That old saying, we constantly are blaming other people for their actions, but the truth is we have full say. We have
Yep.
total say. And that was just a great example of you, setting boundaries and knowing your clear yes and your clear no without your ego getting in the way and all the fears that might erupt from you being wishy-washy and being afraid of if he left. Or so awesome. So
Right.
awesome.
It was so awesome. It was so
So I bet the
cool.
feeling was better than the actual result.
I told him, I said, if
Mm-hmm.
nothing if this relationship ends right here, like this will have changed my entire life. And so, it was
Yeah,
so powerful. It was wild. Yeah.
totally. Oh, I love it. I love that. Okay, so let's shift a little bit into emotional truth. We store this energy in our body, right? These emotions, and some of them, most of them, are kept stagnant in us because we fear them. We fear facing them. And what I've noticed in my surroundings more so lately is people coming up against challenges, and yet they're knowing they're there, but they avoid them because there are emotions attached to them and they don't want to face those truths. So in your work, how do you work with that when people have some deep rooted fears and hurts and pains and betrayals that need to come up? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so we tend to think like that actually facing our fears or facing those emotions, that it will kill us. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
the underlying, the subconscious belief that if I go there, this will kill me. And
Yes.
the truth of the matter is once you start to dive into that emotion and dive into that feeling, everything changes. The emotion actually starts to dissipate
Mm-hmm.
and you clear the energy. And I like to talk about energy and emotions like this. So we as we're going through life and we're around our parents and stuff, we take on a lot of lower level emotions, fear, guilt, shame, control, anger. Any of those sound familiar? And if you just tune in and you feel how those feel in your body, they feel heavy. They don't
Mm-hmm.
feel good, right?
Right.
And so the work that I do, being intuitive, I have a belief, that many times those emotions start from one moment from childhood. And so the work that I do, I'll just tune in intuitively and just notice it's like, okay, this feels like mom, it feels like age 3, and then maybe the emotion around it is fear or rejection. Right. And so I will help someone just to see that. And once you can start to see that, we dive into the energy, we dive into that emotion. And all I do is look at the energy, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm sensing fear and I see a wall up. I see
Mm.
that you're completely blocked off. And so what we do is we see that emotion, it's like it's in the body. And when we see that emotion coming out of the body and choosing a higher level energy. So that higher level energy might be love, it might be light, it might be joy, it might be gratitude. There's like so many different higher level energies that you can choose. And so you see that coming out of your body and you breathe in a new, a more positive alternative. So you breathe in love there. You breathe in like, for that example of fear of rejection or that fear, you might breathe in expansiveness. You might breathe in calm. And so, I'll give someone some various choices or whatever I'm hearing intuitively that's going to really shift that experience. And then, they get to also kind of, choose if there's something else that really is coming up for them just to bring that into their body. And what ends up happening is we so many times think that it has to take a long time to come out of our stuff. It has to take a long time, and it has to be painful. And yes, there are painful moments that happen in childhood that need to be cleared for us to really step into that true joy, to step into that light, to step into that love. And so, of course, that is a piece of it. But guess what? It doesn't have to take years to make shifts. You can clear, like time is an illusion. And so, we can choose to really clear that and move that energy, that emotion, that feeling super quickly. And it's just about being open to, okay, this emotion, this energy is here for a reason. It's here to show me something. Yes. It's here for me to help to heal and to step into more truth, into my truth, versus that inherited truth that we took on from childhood that maybe we learned from our parents. And the more that we open up to the stuff, the more connected we are to ourselves, the more connected we are to our hearts, and the more connected we are to our souls.
Yeah. And that leads me to this question. As we do this work, would you say that our desires will shift? Because
yeah, absolutely. Because what ends up happening, our desires absolutely shift because we've taken on so many stories from childhood. And I mean, the most simple one is the family stuff, right? Most of us grew up in homes where it's like the expectation was I am going to get married and I'm going to have kids. And that may be true for you when you undo the stuff, and it may not be. It might be that you are just this like world traveler that wants to explore and expand, and maybe part of that is having that big love in your life, and maybe part of that is just like, I really like being by myself. And either way, to know that truth, because what ends up happening, if you look at, like, if you're carrying around, I'm supposed to have a family, I'm supposed to have kids, that energy is obligation energy. And again, that's heavy energy. And maybe there's some guilt in there too, because maybe your parents have said to you, yeah, I want grandkids, or, this is supposed to happen. Right. And so you start to clear that out, and you clear out that guilt that you're feeling because you're not living the life that your parents want from you, and you don't really know what's truthful for you. All of a sudden you start to clear that out, and you feel so light and free and happy because, like, you now know, like, you're moving from your truth, and you now know, like, as soon as you let go of, like, I have to do something, as soon as you let go of, like, this is an expectation, and you become okay with the fact that I don't want kids or I don't want a family. As soon as you let that go, all of a sudden, so many times our families show up for us differently without us even having to have a conversation with them. And that in itself, I mean, can you think of, like, how many times you maybe didn't want to talk to your parents about something? You wish that they show up for you differently. And as soon as you bring in that self-love and that self-acceptance to you, all of a sudden everything changes.
Yes, that is so powerful. The conversation isn't even necessary, right?
Yes. Oh, really cool.
It's so cool. It is so cool. So tell me about how your whole journey has shaped you to be doing the work that you're doing today.
Yeah. So
how has it led you here?
Yeah, like, okay, so of course, you go on your own self growth journey. And that was like the start, when I started working on patterns and I started working on processes. And then, I got more and more into meditation. I got more and more into how do we clear this stuff? How do we create powerful, quick change within ourselves? And then how can I do that? Help someone else do that. And what I've come to realize is part of what my soul chose is to create every single aspect in my life. And so if you think of, like, the idea, so victim energy is kind of low, it can be like that low level, heavier energy, right? And so if you think about this idea that, like, okay, things are just happening to me, I'm just going through life, and then moving into owning what a powerful creator that each of us is if we really are prepared to step into that truth, and then beginning to shift things around in your life to really own and manifest that creation, right? And so, one example for me was I was in the corporate world. I was in advertising and marketing for about, I started when I was really young. So I was in advertising and marketing for about 10 years. And then I moved into sales and I was there for about 10 years as well. And so, part of that is like, it would have been easy for me to stay in my corporate job. Now, of course, as I was choosing it, the universe chose it for me too. And so actually that job, I got let go 3 days before I was going to quit, which is like, again, part of the miracles,
Yeah.
part of manifestation was so amazing and delicious and awesome. And so, but I set out on this journey to choose and create every single aspect of my life. Everything from, from that career choice to, this relationship that's in front of me right now, this beautiful, yummy, healing relationship that's leading me to my big love, to the big love relationship, and to manifesting crazy amounts of abundance. I love to work with people around abundance and really recognizing the income ceilings that we set for ourselves and really releasing those income ceilings and stepping into, okay, wait, it's like I had the thought one day around, I was expressing to a friend of mine, I said, what if like being in seven figures, that's actually small? So it's like, here we are, like, we're in this world and we're like, oh yeah, six figures. And most of us, like, that's a benchmark for us.
Yeah.
And it's like, what if actually like the universe has something even bigger than that?
What if?
What if? And because of these income ceilings, and when I say income ceilings, if you just tune in yourself to, okay, how much have I allowed myself to make up until this point? And you probably have some, maybe it is in that six-figure mark, maybe it's a little bit lower than that. You probably have some sort of subconscious or unconscious limit that you've set for yourself. And once you start to clear the energy and those abundance blocks that we all carry with us, maybe you grew up in a household where where the idea, the energy in that household was, we have no money, or we have to be careful about how we spend money.
You just have to, you just have to listen.
Yeah. And all you have to do is be present to that. And it's like, oh my gosh, now I'm carrying that around in my adulthood. And part of that energy, that idea makes us feel very comfortable, makes us feel very safe, And so it's like, if you grew up in that energy, and maybe you've even taken on the energy that, it's wrong to have money. It's wrong to be abundant. Or it's not spiritual to be abundant. And so, when we start to become aware of some of those subconscious things that were in our household and start to shift those and clear those, all of a sudden, you can attract money without even having to do anything. So maybe one of your beliefs is, I have to do
Work
something
hard
to make money, and so there can be so many pieces, so many different blocks that we carry, that once you bring those to the light, you start to shift them, you clear them, and you make more room for more abundance to show up in your lives, for example.
Yeah, those are awesome examples. Awesome. So is there anything that you want to add to the conversation before we wrap up?
I think it's just to emphasize, like, we all deserve to have the life of our dreams. We all deserve to have everything that your heart desires, everything that your soul desires. You deserve that. And it's calling to you. And all you need to do is to start to take the steps, take the actions. You don't have to know the exact right way.
Right.
Just start to step in that direction, knowing that the universe is going to keep giving you feedback, yes or no, so that you can really step into and live that big life. And, as part of that, I mean, get support. I have I can't even name, I probably have 4 or 5 coaches right now that I'm working with that support me in different ways in my life. And, it's helped me to really step in and move towards and own and honor and live from the life that is calling me, the life that I know that I'm meant to have. So I just go for it.
Yeah. This idea of taking one step at a time, right? So it's really about following guidance, right?
Yes.
It's about dropping out of what the mind tells you to do and dropping into your heart, your intuition, your higher self, right?
Yes.
What if somebody's having trouble hearing that guidance?
Yeah. So
I know this is a whole nother conversation.
so like we were talking about these heavier emotions in our body, right?
Yes.
And those, I believe that those heavier emotions can keep us from our guidance, from being able to tune in
Mm-hmm.
to our intuition, because our intuition lives at a much higher energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, working with someone, or as you begin to go dive into your own emotions, as you start to clear those, you will be able to tune in and hear the guidance that's always coming in. We are all intuitive. So you will
Mm.
be able to hear that. You just got to clear out that heavy energy that stops you from being able to hear what's always coming in.
Yeah.
So that's one piece of it. And a simple exercise that we can all do when you're wanting to kind of get connected to that heart space, what I like to do is just place my hand on my heart. And I just like to take some deep breaths and just breathe into my hand, breathe into my heart space. And so I just literally breathe in through my nose, and I fill my belly and the sides of the body and the chest with air. And then I just exhale out. And so if you find yourself in your mind, one really great practice to do is just to take a minute, take a couple of minutes, and just literally take some breaths, placing your hand on your heart and focus on that heart space. And that can always be so helpful.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So tell listeners where they can find you.
Yeah. So you can find me at deborahAcker.com. It's just DeborahAcker.com. And there you can get my Living in Your Truth guide, which you can also get at bit.lee/livinginyourtruthguide.
Awesome.
But that guide is all the steps that I took to move towards truth, to get truth in your life, all the different things that have really helped me open up to the life that is calling to me. So, and I would love for you to be part of my community, to stay connected. Always love hearing from people and hearing how I can support you, hearing how what we talked about today landed in you. So I would
Mm-hmm.
love to hear that. And then actually, and I'm not sure when Denise is going to put this out, but Denise is going to be on my radio show. I have a radio show, Truth Talk Radio, and it's on transformationtalkradio.com.
I'm so
But if you,
excited.
yeah, I'm so excited we're going to have another awesome truth conversation. And so I would love if you can join me. And to find out more about that show and tuning in, you can just head to truthtalkradioshow.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Deborah.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such an amazing conversation.
Such a well-needed conversation. So great. So great.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Have a wonderful day.
You too. You too. Thank you so much.